It's a puzzle to many economists why there isn't more spent on corruption than is actually the case. Just imagine, here you have a coercive government which controls a military and police force, and it has far-reaching powers to tax and regulate an economy. It could commandeer a significant portion of national output, and you might think that in an equilibrium, the amount of money paid to influence that government would be about equal to what that government is able to take. But in practice, that doesn't seem to be the case. Just to give a simple example, you can imagine, for instance, that there's an agricultural subsidy worth, to farmers, say, $10 million. But the bribe or favors required to get that subsidy from politicians is very often much lower, say $100,000. So we're asking, why is corruption so cheap? One possibility is that voters and citizens simply do not like corruption, and they do not like their politicians being too corrupt or appearing too wealthy or earning too much money. Politicians therefore restrain their corruption to keep some favor in the public eye. This applies to democracies, but it may apply to many autocracies as well. Even though an autocracy does not allow for explicit, honest, open voting, an autocracy very often cares deeply about what citizens think because it wants to stay in power. So autocracies, too, may be responsive to public opinion in this regard. They are very sensitive to accusations of corruption. A second factor limiting the size of bribes and corruption is simply competition. You could imagine, for instance, that there are numerous legislators willing to sell their vote to interest groups, and there's a kind of bidding process which goes on. If a government decision were simply up to one person, that person could demand a very high price. But let's say that a lobby requires 5 extra votes, and there are 100 legislators willing to sell their vote. Well, there will be a process of supply and demand, but the more politicians or the more political coalitions or the more regulators or judges or whatever are willing to sell their vote or sell their support, the price for that support will be correspondingly lower. Let's go back to that agricultural subsidy worth, say, $10 million. If a political coalition were to demand, say, $9 million to hand out that subsidy, that coalition might be replaced by another willing to do the same for $8 million, and then competition will bring that price successively down. Finally, interest groups may be unwilling to pay larger bribes simply because they do not always trust government. So again, say there's an agricultural subsidy of $10 million, and farmers are charged by politicians $9 million to put that subsidy in place. There's the risk that once the $9 million is paid, the government then turns around a day later and removes the subsidy and tries to sell it again, either to that group of farmers or to some other set of interest groups. So there's a general lack of trust when it comes to corruption, and of course it's not hard to understand why you would not trust the corrupt people you're dealing with. But the very existence of that lack of trust means that the price for bribes and corrupt transactions may be correspondingly lower. For further information and analysis on this topic, you can Google Tullock Paradox. Gordon Tullock is the social scientist who first thought about this problem seriously, and you also can Google costs of rent seeking.